Hello. Today we're going to be talking about Etsy Password's partner in crime, Etsy Shadow. So when I discussed Etsy Password, I mentioned that it doesn't actually store passwords. Instead, these passwords are stored in a file called Etsy Shadow, and it follows a very similar format to Etsy Password. So if I were to view it, Etsy Shadow, right? So if I'm going to view Etsy Shadow, what we'll see is, oh wow, it looks very similar. Each single line corresponds to a specific user, and for that user, we have a bunch of different fields associated with it. And so here is how we break down those fields. Most of them are irrelevant. If you want to learn it in more depth, here's a great blog explaining it, but I'll just cover what's necessary. So this is the user, and then we have their password hash. I'm not going to explain how hashing works or what this means. All you need to know is that this is the password. And then we have a bunch of these other fields related to that password. Like last time it was changed, how old it's allowed to be, some periods that you'll never use. This is the expiration date we were talking about when talking about Etsy password. And this last field just isn't even used. So most of this is nonsense to us. What we really care about is this password hash here because it has the password, So in terms of vulnerabilities for Etsy Shadow, there aren't that many. One thing is the permissions. Here it is 640, which means root can read and write, but the average user can't read because this has the password hash. If we could see the password hash, we could obtain the password. So that's our first vulnerability, changing the permissions on Etsy Shadow. If we made it 644, then that means that anyone could read those hashes, and then they could use a password cracking tool, for example, Hashcat, or in this case, I'm going to show you how John works, to crack that password. So the gist is passwords are important. We want to store them in a secure way. We want to store it in a way where it doesn't actually tell us what the password is, but we can still verify that if someone entered their password, we know it's the correct password. So to do this, we use an algorithm called a hashing algorithm, which basically maps a password to a specific hash. And the point is, it's really easy to go from password to hash, but it should be impossible to go from hash back into a password. The only way you could do that is by testing a bunch of different passwords until one of them, the hash matches. And so that's what a password cracking tool does. It just goes through a bunch of passwords, uses fancy things like rainbow tables and other things I won't go into. And it basically goes through a word list of passwords to figure out, can I crack this hash? And so let's do that here. We're going to use John. So John the Ripper is a popular password cracking tool. And we can just clone it directly from GitHub. Specifically, I'm going to clone something called Jumbo John. It's an expanded version that allows for more formats. So we just git clone. And when you clone it, you'll see we have documents, tools. So yeah, I cloned it into here, and you'll see we have a bunch of different things. We have this run folder that contains a bunch of different functions for a bunch of different scenarios, but for this case, all we care about is unshadow. And what we would do is we would run this command. We unshadow the password in the shadow, and that generates a hash for us. So in this demo, I'm not going to use my actual Etsy password and Etsy Shadow because, I don't want to leak my creds. But what I can do is use one I've received from a competition. So documents tools, and then that's John run unshadow. And we want the password file first, and then the shadow file next. And this gives us a hash, okay? It prepares it to be in a format that John can handle, okay? So I'm going to run this, and then I'm going to do this into a file name, so it's stored as a file, and then I can run John on it. So let's go ahead and let's run John. So that's going to be just John run John, and then provide the name of the file. And we run that, and it's going to start cracking, okay? And you just let it sit there for a bit, and eventually it'll get through it, and it'll find a password that matches. It'll display it out here, and then you've cracked the password. That password allows you to log in. But that's not important. That's going to take some time, so I'm going to ignore it. Instead, let's move to talking on about vulnerabilities. So we could do that, make it readable. Another thing is we could just change it to 666 so we can directly edit the hashes and therefore set the password to whatever we want. So that's what red team can do. What does blue team do in response? They just change the permissions to what it's supposed to be. 164.0, super simple. Another interesting vulnerability is this is the password hash, but what happens if that is blank? Remember, we did the same trick for Etsy password, where if it's blank, the system's just like, oh, you don't have a password? Okay, you can log in. That's fine. So for Etsy shadows, it's the same thing. If you have this blank, the system's just going to be like, oh, okay, you can log in, no password needed. And so that's a pretty bad vulnerability. So let's test. We have, I'm going to do 2 this time. So let's do, I believe, let's check. I'm going to do no shadow and perm shadow. Those are the 2 ones related to Etsy shadow. So perm shadow and boom. And let's go ahead and set that up. Boom. And let's clear. And so if I run my checker, you'll see I have 2 vulnerabilities I need to fix. So we were just talking about Etsy shadow. Let's go ahead and look at Etsy shadow. First, I want to check what its permissions are. And you'll see that, oh, it is 644. That's bad. We want to change that back to 6400. Etsy shadow. Okay. And let's go ahead and run our check again. Boom, we got one of them down, 1 more to go. Let me go ahead and look at Etsy shadow, see if anything's unusual. Okay. Okay. At first glance, it's looking chill, like how it's supposed to be. But if you look at this closely, you might see that, oh, for this sys user, we have a blank password right there, which means we could just log in as sys if we wanted to. And let me see if I can get this to work. So I should be able to just switch user to sys, and it worked. I can now run commands as sys, which is not great because sys is a system user. People shouldn't be able to log into that and do shenanigans. So that is pretty bad. Let's go ahead and fix that. So let me become root again. And let me go ahead and, oh, wrong password, okay. And let me go ahead and edit Etsy shadow. So what are we going to do about this? Well, we could put that. That just means no password. We could do this, which means like account is locked. Shouldn't be able to log in. I'm going to do this, okay? And now let's go ahead and go back and test if we can become sys. And we'll see, oh, it prompts for a password now. And system obviously doesn't have a password, so no matter what we do, we're going to get authentication failure. So that's been patched. Yippee! So let's go ahead and let's see if we patch the thing. Oh, still not good. Interesting. I'm going to cheat and figure out what's up. And we'll see. Oh. 2 things we did. One, we changed the password, but also we changed its login shell. So if I were to look at Etsy password and look at sys, you would normally see sys has been false. So we shouldn't be able to log in. But as you clearly saw earlier, we were. That's not good. What's happening here? And so what we'll see is that if we try to do bin false and just run that directly, that is a shell. That's bad. We could also try doing diff with bin sh and bin false. And, we see it's just a copy of bin sh. That's not good. So that's been backdoored. How do we fix that? If you recall when we were talking about Etsy password, there's two things you can do. If you have a copy of it, you could use your backup to back it up. Or if unfortunately you do not have that, then you could just get one from online. So in our case, I do not want to get it from online because that is a slow process. Let's do something quick. Let me try user sbin no login. Okay, it's working as expected. When you run it, the account can't log in. So what I'm going to do, although this isn't appropriate, it's a quick fix. I'm just going to go ahead and use this and copy that into bin false. So now when we try to do bin false, we get, account is not available. And if we were to have that vulnerability still, where this is blank, okay? And remember, we were able to just su into sys. If we do that now, we can't log in. The account is currently not available. We've patched it. Awesome. And so if we were to check, first of all, let me go ahead and fix that's the shadow thing again. So there, so they can't log in. Let's go ahead and check. Yippee, we still have both of them. So with that, you've understood all the vulnerabilities related to Etsy Shadow. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.